All right. How are you? Happy Easter to you. I'm Terrydavidmulligan, and this is the Terrydavidmulligan YouTube channel. I'm sorry I had to put my name on it, but there was no other way to get around it. You have to stamp it. Sorry, I'm sorry. It's tough saying my own name over and over and over again. But it's a YouTube channel, and here's a name that you have heard a lot. Nardwuar, the Human Serviette. Our first podcast that we did 6 years ago, the Mulligan Stew podcast, we needed someone special to kick it off, and it was Nardwuar. We've known each other a long time, and he was perfect. Now that we get to episode 300 of the Mulligan Stew podcast, he's perfect to come back and just join us 6 years later. Now, in those 6 years, when I interviewed him, I think I had just introduced him to Snoop. All hell broke loose when he and Snoop Dogg got together. And now, 6 years later, he has 2.5 million followers. Like, it's a lot. It's a lot. Millions, in the millions, all over the world. And at Halloween, millions of people dress up as Nardwuar, the Human Serviette. He's still the same guy from West Vancouver. He used to come to my house at Halloween. My treat was not a candy; it was a record. So anyway, it's good to slow him down long enough to talk for 30 minutes. Thank you. And he brought with him his usual treasures, and you'll see when we get into it. So enjoy this conversation. This is really cool. This is something very, 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 very special for me, and hopefully for you. It's Nardwuar, the Human Serviette, on the Mulligan Stew podcast. It's the YouTube version. Enjoy. And you are?
Nardwuar, the Human Serviette from Vancouver, British Columbia, Canada, live on the 300th edition of the Mully Stew podcast. Although it began in 2016, or did it begin in 2018? But congratulations,
Thank
TDM.
you.
300 episodes. The dedication. That's amazing.
Astonishing. 6 years. Now, what happened was we did an interview in 2016 at the long, now sadly departed Roundhouse Radio. And I held on to that interview. And then when it was suggested to me by my friend Elliott, you should be doing a podcast. I said, I don't know what that is. He said, you're already doing it. Just keep going. And we'll record it and do in long form. And he said, who do you want to start with? And I said, I already have it. It's 2 years old. It's seasoned. It's been cellared. It's Nardwuar, the Human Serviette at Roundhouse Radio. And boom, I found it. I kept it. I didn't lose it. There you are in your full glory. And it was the perfect starting point. And now here we are 300 episodes later, 6 years in our lives, you and I. When was your first podcast?
Well, actually, for CITR, I was going to say we began podcasting in approximately 2006, but my first radio show was in October 1987 on CITR. But actually, there are Nardwuar archives going back to 2006. But I was going to say, so we did an interview at Roundhouse Radio, and we're speaking to Terrydavidmulligan, episode 3000. But that was in 2016. You didn't start the pod till 2018, and this is number 300. So really, this should be number 600. Like, how many interviews did you do between 2016 and 2018? Would you guess?
Yeah, it's a damn fine question. I hadn't thought about that number. It would be a lot. I'm sorry. Would you, off the top of your head, what would that be?
Well, would you guess? Like 450 or 500?
500.
This is 500. Really like episode 450 or 500?
Yeah, because I don't know about you, but when you get to do really great podcasts, you run it once, and then 6 months later you say, you know what, I'd like to just to remind anybody who missed it, this is what we do. This is how we do it. And I love the long form format. I love editing, as you do. You edit your own stuff. Do you know that what we had in common? First of all, what I loved most about you and your makeup is that you embraced radio. To this day, you still do. We both have something in common from our high school days, and that is
Grant Lawrence.
Well, Grant Lawrence, but we also were the announcers in the school on the school system, talking into the microphone about classes and things. You did that at school, didn't you?
The pre-recorded announcements. Yes, people would listen to them in their high school like classes, and they would hear me through the speakers doing announcements. And the wild thing about it is, I think it kind of trained you for future life in radio. Was like, if you kind of bombed, people like, I heard you on the radio, you sucked, or I heard you in PA and you sucked. But if you did a really good announcement, you'd be leaving the principal's office. Yes, we did recorded them live from the principal's office, and people were like high-fiving you as you left the principal's office. So it was amazing to get the feedback so quickly too. And it did prepare me. Also, it made me think, like, when you're speaking on the radio, there's always people listening. I always have that idea, whether it be like in high school, just doing announcements, or on CITR radio, or doing stuff on YouTube or freelance. Like, I always think about there's an audience out there. I never forget. It's like this me and the person. I think a lot of times people, when they do interviews, are like, oh, I'm never nervous. I like loosen up. I'm never. Well, like, if you're not nervous, you should be doing it. I'm always nervous. I'm nervous talking to you, TDM, on the occasion of episode 300 of your podcast, Mulligan Stew. And I was just wondering, Wes Dawkins, you mentioned Wes Dawkins in one of your podcasts. Yep. I don't know much about Wes Dawkins. I have one of those records. Could you tell us a bit about Wes Dawkins, a Canadian, an amazing song I've been listening to lately on Spotify called Manipulator, Wes Dawkins.
Yes. Well, his name is Wes Dacus, and he was the band. If you were having a grade 10, 11, or grad class event, that was the band that you got in Alberta, Manitoba, Saskatchewan, and parts of British Columbia. They were the band that came in totally with their own lights, their own sound, their own amps, own PVs, all of the things that you wanted in your school gym. And they had hits because they would go to, here's the cool thing, they would go to Clovis, New Mexico. Norman Petty's studio that Buddy Holly recorded his initial hits in. They would drive to New Mexico, record with him, come back and play them on Canadian radio. And Barry Allen was the lead singer. Barry and I had been friends a long, long time. And Wes Dacus was a tough cookie. He played bass. And then
they're collected, I think, on like a compilation. People can check them on Spotify. I think it is actually from the Norman Perry Vaults instrumentals, and they do an amazing one called Manipulator.
Yeah,
like an amazing tune. I was just curious, how did they do popularity-wise in other provinces? That was Alberta, right? That they were in.
Yeah, but they did really well in the West, very well in the West. They didn't get past Winnipeg. Ontario was not interested in Canadian bands from the West at all. And it took some like the Stampeders finally sort of broke that wall down a bit.
And one of the bands actually I learned from your podcast as well, Bruce Allen. You talked to Bruce Allen, and I mentioned bands because I didn't realize like he managed like Noodles from the Offspring. Like, you cornered Bruce Allen for an interview. That's pretty hard, isn't it? Could you get a bit of background on that? Like, to get an interview with Bruce Allen.
We've been friends a long time, and I just at his core, even though he's a bombastic kind of guy and big grand gestures,
a manager. Maybe you can give a bit of background on him, like the manager.
He's the man. He was the manager of BTO and Bachman in his career. He helped to break them on the West Coast, got him out of Winnipeg, and then he did a handshake with Brian Adams that lasted some 30 some years until Brian finally decided to get a new manager. Jan Arden now, who am I forgetting? He literally, I thought for a while he might be the manager of ZZ Top because he was gigging with them all the time. And Michael Bublé, who he said to Michael Bublé, you have to go and do 300 dates in Vancouver this year. And Bublé would sing in any bar he could find just to get Bruce to sign him. And once he signed him, then he became a star.
And Bruce was also like a bouncer really early on in his career.
Yes. He and Sam Feldman were bouncers in a club. Yes. They had one door and he had the other door. And then they became partners and they became big time managers, but they were bouncers. That's when I met them.
I know a lot of people have tried to get a hold of Bruce recently to do interviews because he has such an interesting life story. And you, Terrydavidmulligan, congratulations again on 300 episodes. You were able to get a hold. That's really incredible. Like, that is incredible. Because you might think, oh, a manager. No, he rarely does interviews, and his story he has is incredible.
It's the storytelling. That's what I'm after.
And Terry, actually, I wanted to show you a little picture, and it involves me sharing the screen. Is everything okay and set up for me sharing the screen? I know we're doing an audio podcast, but this is for Zoom as well. So have you allowed me to share my screen?
I think I have. Don't yell at me if it doesn't work, please.
Okay, let's try now. Okay, and we'll bring up the photo right now, and you should see. What do you see there?
We've covered. I got to move you over a bit. It's me and you. Oh my gosh! Oh, that's fantastic. That's you and I. Where are we? Are we at the station?
We are outside the Cinderella Ballroom on Main Street, Main 11th in Vancouver, British Columbia, Canada. And I am holding on January 5th, 1990, a record, the first record I put out, Oh God, My Mom's on Channel 10. And you have come to the gig, we're outside the gig at the Cinderella Ballroom, to interview me. This is my first time live on your show to promote the Oh God, My Mom's on Channel 10 record. Do you remember that at all?
First of all, it's strangely, but I remember the outfit. That black and white outfit. I remember that. And I remember that you had sunglasses and I couldn't match that. And other than that, I'm just pleased that we did this interview. What year was this?
That is January 5th, 1990. And notice I'm holding a record called Oh God, My Mom's on Channel 10. And it is the first vinyl record that I ever put out. In fact, the first release on Nardwuar, the Human Serviette Records. And you still have that LP, at least you did, in 2016, when you interviewed me, Nardwuar, the Human Serviette, on Roundhouse Radio. And then you saved that interview for your first podcast in 2018. And now we're celebrating episode 300.
Now, here's the thing. Do you still have that video, that interview?
It's up there. It is. Yes, I do. Yeah, on VHS tape. It's still saved.
Look at you on Much West. Look at you with that haircut. Look at your glasses and you got holding your stuff. You got all cleaned up to do that shot. That's fantastic. Thank you for sharing that.
Well, that was right before the concert that we did, the 2-night record release party featuring my band, the Evaporators, the Smugglers from Calgary, the Vindicators, the Mighty Squirrels, the LA 150s, a whole bunch of bands from Vancouver, British Columbia, Canada. So thank you, Terry, for coming down to the concert and covering it. And I think it's really great is for that actual concert, I handed you a high 8 tape, and you just sent it away and they edited in the interview. The quality didn't matter. They just threw it in there. I love that. I just gave you a tape and you send it away. And then you return the tape to me as well. So thank you, Terrydavidmulligan. That was my first encounter on screen with you in 1990, but it didn't actually stop there. Believe it or not, it can. Actually, what do you remember about that time? That was the beginning of the 1990s.
I remember being the luckiest guy in the world. I remember because I was able to do radio and television at the same time. That was the cool thing. I could do my gig on radio, and then I'd go and pick up a camera and Jay Myris, and away we'd go, and we'd shoot like crazy.
Now, speaking of Jay Myris, we have another little clip right here, and I'm going to share the screen. This is from 1998, and here we have a clip right here, and hopefully it's... Do you see a clip here?
I got it.
Me and drummer of the Evaporators, Scott Livingston, wearing some Hudson's Bay jackets. Do you see that?
Yeah.
This was in the Good Jacket in a store called the Good Jacket on Kingsway in Vancouver, British Columbia, Canada, operated by Sean Raggett. Props out to Sean. And the Evaporators and the Goblins, which are my bands, were about to launch our new record, I Got a Rash, which I think you still have, don't you?
I do. I still have it, yes.
And I actually, let's just check if we should. I stopped the share, but I wanted to make sure that that we share the sound, because this is actually not only should I say video, there is some audio as well. Okay, so here we have
Yeah.
Me and Scott Livingstone in 1998
Yeah.
interacting with Terrydavidmulligan on Terrydavidmulligan's 300th episode of the podcast. But this is nothing to do with the podcast. This is him on Much West. Here we are at the Good Jacket, and this is Scott Livingstone, also of
The guy, Goblins and Evaporators.
the Goblins and Evaporators, and we're here at the Good Jacket here on Kingsway in Vancouver, British Columbia, Canada. You're going to insert an Evaporators 8-track.
Okay.
Insert it right in there, Terry, with much proud, if you could. There is the Evaporators on 8-track, in French, a French tune there. This is a song called Pouvatel, Pouvatel. Now, we can also change the channels. It's a great thing about the 8-track. Check this out. Happy day! Now, the great thing also about 8-tracks is you can groove to your favorite bands. Like, check out Devo on 8-track. Is there any better hold on. This is another first. Terrydavidmulligan, have you ever played Devo on 8-track before?
I haven't, no.
There we go. A first of Much Music. Devo on 8-track. And all these 8-tracks are available at Nardwuar to Human Serviette Records. And check out www.nardwuar.com. So there we have a little segment from the Good Jacket filmed by Jay Maris. But in the interview there, where I was showing you some 8-tracks, my band, the Evaporators, had produced some 8-tracks. Yes, we recorded to 8-track as well. You could buy the 8-track. You are like eating something. What is going on there, Terry? Do you remember that at all?
No, I don't even remember the toque.
There's some, we gave you the toque. We gave you the toque to wear. That was a Nardwuar toque to fit in. But what is that food right beside you? You're like eating food as we were on the air.
No
That's
idea.
amazing. Always
No
breaking the
idea.
rules, right? If there are any. What was going on there? What was that the first time you ate on it? What's going on?
Well, yeah, I'll take a free meal anywhere. If you order, if you tell me I can eat and work at the same time, I'll do that. Okay, here's what I need to know: the smugglers. Grant Lawrence has, when asked at the Punk Rock Hall of Fame to put something in a case to remember the smugglers by, he gave them a rubber boot with the Smuggler's S on it. Do you have anything in the Punk Rock Hall of Fame?
If they ever asked, I would like to donate my hat,
Wow.
my tartan hat, to the Punk Rock
You'd give
Hall of
up
Fame.
your
I'd be
hat?
honored to do that.
You'd give up that hat?
Or a semblance of the hat.
Okay, stunt hat. Did you ever get your original toque back?
Or maybe the Nard tartan pants. I'd throw them as well.
Yeah, that'd be
there.
good. Yeah, that'd be good.
No, I never got the. Yeah, the reason I wear a tartan hat is I used to always wear a toque.
Yeah.
That my godmother gave me, but unfortunately, Sebastian Bach of the hair metal band Skid Row
Yes.
took my toque and never returned it.
Yeah.
And that's why I wear a tartan hat. And I think you were there that night, weren't you?
Yes, I was. I saw that you were not happy.
You tried to get my toque back.
You were
It
not
didn't
happy.
happen,
Yeah.
but maybe it was for the good, because that's why I'm wearing a tartan hat on the occasion of 300 episodes of the Mully Stew podcast.
Actually-
Even though Nardwuar to Human Serviette was #1 recorded in 2016,
That's
and
right.
the podcast goes from
right.
2018 till
have-
now.
we have
But
known
amazing dedication.
I know.
to-
We have known
what-
each other a long time. Here's the
but
thing.
I just meant the dedication. Like every week you do it. That's incredible, isn't it?
Yep.
Like
Yep.
every week, right?
Every week. Sometimes it's the day of release. Now, here's the thing. I need to know. This is really, really, really important. You've had some health issues from time to time, and serious ones. How's your health? Are you good?
Touch wood, I'm doing okay, and thanks so much for asking. I have cut down, as I mentioned in 2016, a bit on the hamburgers and a bit on the cheese. I've really cut down on the cheese, so it's only like maybe like once a week I have cheese or less, but I used to have it like every day, so I've cut down on that. But thank you so much for asking. I really appreciate that, because I guess having a health scare in 99 and a health scare in 2015, I am been scared enough now to know I don't want any more scares.
What famous people did you go to school with?
Well, We mentioned him earlier, Grant Lawrence from the rock and roll band The Smugglers, who has been on your podcast quite a few times and who lived very near to you. In fact, it's through Grant Lawrence that I know you, Terrydavidmulligan, and I know the lore behind you. And I think actually the lore behind you is in one episode that we talked about in 2016, you mentioned Joe Strummer coming to your house for Christmas Eve and singing carols, but the tapes of that are gone. In the time since 2016, has anything surfaced? Have there been any new discoveries
it's all back in Toronto? I would literally have to go there and plead. And then if they were listening to my plea, I'd say, could I just screen my tapes? I won't touch anything else. Just let me look at the labels and find these interviews. And the first interview I ever did with Tom Petty, literally the week that his album came out, that first album came out, we were in LA and we did the interview in Shelter Records, Leon Russell's Shelter Records. And I've never heard it. I did it. I sent it to CBC and that's the last I heard of it.
And for the Joe Strummer thing, this quickly, he came to your house? Joe Strummer actually came to your house. There's documentation, but it's been lost. But what happened when he came to your house?
He had agreed to sing a Christmas song because he was on tour. And I was, my back was out. And so he came over to the house with the rep. I think it was Frank Gigliotti. And did 3 songs under the Christmas tree. And my dad happened to be visiting and was sitting in the corner, had no idea what was going on.
So in the 8 years since we last talked, nothing has surfaced. Nothing has resurfaced.
Nothing.
Because I noticed you had a Joni Mitchell interview from the archives. That has resurfaced, has it or not?
I just stumbled across that. I don't know how it survived. I have no idea how it happened. And the other one is the Jimi Hendrix interview, the Jimi Hendrix Experience, which was at CBC. And it's terribly mic'd. It's terrible audio. And I was awful, because I was so nervous. But my great regret of my life is that I did not know enough about Jimi Hendrix. That's what caused me to be like you, do your homework, go and find out things, because I should have known that he grew up part of his teen life in Vancouver just to get out of Seattle. And he had family here, the first Black community downtown. And they basically, Jimmy grew up here and got away from some tough times in Los Angeles, or in Seattle rather. And I didn't know that. I knew none of that, none of it. And I'm beating myself up to this day.
But after the interview, didn't you find out more about his background? Didn't you say after the interview, like when the tape stopped, you're like, he kind of volunteered the info after the interview?
That's when we talked about it. And I apologized. I said, I'm sorry, I didn't know. And the fact that I didn't know showed me how far I had to go in terms of being an interviewer. Now,
but people can check that out right now if they hop to YouTube. Terrydavidmulligan, Jimi Hendrix in Vancouver. But don't do that, because you're listening live to the Mully Stew podcast, episode 300. With Nardwuar, the Human Serviette, who was on episode 1, recorded in 2016.
I made a note to myself here. I don't do numbers a lot, but you have like the top 1% of podcasts in the world. Is that true now?
Not at all. Not at all true. No.
Okay. No, YouTube. YouTube.
If you want to run with that, feel free. But no, not at all.
Okay. But YouTube, you have huge numbers.
I'm so grateful. And I think you understand this more than anybody. It's like when I did an interview before, you saw the picture of like me and you outside of the Cinderella Ballroom.
Yep.
From 1990, I was holding that record, Oh God, My Mom's on Channel 10, and that had some of my interviews on it, as well as having some bands like the Headless Horsemen or the Gruesomes. It had some interviews, like me talking to Joey Head of DOA. I actually burned that interview to a record. It was recorded on reel-to-reel tape, sent it to a record pressing plant. The record pressing plant pressed up the record, sent it to me, then I brought it to the gig, showed it to you, then mailed it to college radio stations. But that was how hard it was to disseminate an interview. It's like you would actually put it to vinyl and then mail out the record, and then people could find out about you. But now through YouTube, it's amazing. If I do an interview, I can upload it instantly. People can explore that. That's what I love. I'm so grateful that this technology exists, that like someone can be so instant, because it was so hard in the old days, wasn't it, Terrydavidmulligan?
Very
in
tough.
fact, like you were saying, you have all these like vintage tapes, like even from like 20 years ago, they were sold at a garage sale.
Yep.
But nowadays, you would have uploaded them, right?
You would have uploaded them. You would kept them. The first thing you do when I'm finished here, the first thing I do is save it, hold it. It's mine. But
and on these tapes, it was like the first Guess Who gig with Burton Cummins in like, I think it was the 5D or the 4D club, you're the MC.
Dimension Coffee House. Well done. Yep.
And I was just curious, just going back, because this is one thing when I was checking out the 2016 interview, I didn't really explore. You were with the Guess Who when they went to England.
Yeah.
Were you with the Guess Who from Winnipeg, Manitoba, who met they met the Who? Like, did the Guess Who? You were there at that actual moment?
We were there at that actual moment, and the night that the Who released Pictures of Lily, one of those songs, just that single came out. When we were there, we all went to Bag o' Nails, or one of the great clubs, and they played it. They played the single. They played like fantastic 20-30 minutes. Keith Moon destroyed his drums. Pete took his guitar and pushed it through the ceiling and strummed it, and then walked off stage. It was memorable. And the next day, I went and saw Pete because I had known him. I went to his house, top floor. He was up there.
How did you meet him?
I just met him the first time I interviewed him, and he was up there, slowly repairing his guitar that he had damaged. And I thought that spoke lovingly of the kind of guy that he was, that he would destroy these fenders, but then he would go home and he'd repaste it, put it all back together again, and still get carried away and smash it the next night. It was fantastic.
What was the reaction, when the Guess Who met the Who? Like, what did Pete think about the Guess Who from Winnipeg?
They actually had a big laugh about it, because at one point there were lawyers talking about you can't call yourself the Guess Who. Well, no, we're the Guess Who. We're in Canada, and you're the Who. You're in Britain. We're okay. So they had that pissing contest going on. It was pretty good. It was okay. All right, I'm going to run out of time here. Here's what I got to tell you. Oh, by the way, Keith Moon, the best drummer I ever saw, when he was in the hotel in Vancouver on Howe Street, they were bored crazy. He went out and bought some.
What year was this?
I have no clue. And he had piranhas in his bathtub, and he was trying to figure out what to feed them.
You saw this.
We were talking. What do I feed them? I don't want chips. What do they want? What do you feed a piranha? I want to see if they'll eat. So we got room service.
Such amazing history, TDM. Like you, Keith Moon, and piranhas, but also The Last Waltz. How did you get into The Last Waltz? The amazing movie.
Robbie Robertson sent a note saying, you cannot miss this. I knew him as well.
And you were also Terrydavidmulligan in McCabe and Mrs. Miller, filmed in Vancouver, British Columbia, Canada.
That's right, sir. That's absolutely right.
What do you remember about that? Because that's pretty incredible too. Like Robert Altman.
I actually, you know what? I'll tell you a story. I love that whole thing, but Robert Altman, I was doing a junket in Los Angeles for a film. It was an Altman film, and his wife was there. He had passed away, and I took that poster that we were all of us given that were in the movie. I took that poster and brought it down with my luggage and gave it to her. She had never seen it, and he had signed the back of it, and so she has it on her wall now.
That's incredible that you were able to like bring that back. Did Robbie Robertson remember you from The Last Waltz? Because you did one of the last interviews, Rest in Peace, with Robbie Robertson on episode 300 of Wally Stew with me, Nardwuar, the Human Serviette.
No, here's the deal. I did an interview with him at Roundhouse Radio, and it failed. audio never happened. I was in another studio and I was told it was recording, and it didn't. I had to phone him the next day in Calgary for his last date. And he starts the interview by saying, the only reason I'm doing this is because it's you. And so I just realized that I had got a gold card entry into Robbie Robertson's life.
Well, how did you meet him initially? At the Last Waltz? Is that where you met him, or did you meet him before that?
No. I met him as part of the band, and I always wanted to interview him because he was writing the tunes, and we had mutual friends, Richard Bell, and it worked out really well. We just got to know each other.
You never saw him with the Hawks or Ronnie Hawkins?
No, they didn't come out this way at all. They were a Toronto band, plain and simple. I need to ask you a couple of questions. Do you have anything up ahead this year, next year, in the next 5 years that you want to get done? Is there a book? Is there a movie? Is there a documentary? Is there anything you want to document, get done now to preserve what's happening to you now?
Nothing. I'm just happy to wake up in the morning with a heartbeat.
Okay. Well, I thought, okay. Do you have any film credits? Have you done any walkthroughs and shots?
Not as much as you. Like, I was looking, TDM, you've done so much on IMDb, like including like a 1972 production with Bill Ryder. Hey, Taxi?
Yeah.
What was that? Like 1972 Bill Ryder?
That's great. That's great. You can find that stuff. Here's what I need to know. You finally got your star in the BC Entertainment Hall of Fame. Where did they put it?
Right outside where there used to be that great place. I'm right up there. So right near the Commodore Ballroom. In fact, I was so honored to get the star and the Nardwuar Day in Vancouver, September the 29th, 2019. And if actually you check on YouTube, Nardwuar Gets a Star, you can actually see me crowd surfing in my band, The Evaporators, all the way to the star on Granville Street and then back up to the stage. I'm so honored for that. And you mentioned
at your acceptance speech, you said, now I need an Emmy and a Juno. You haven't got an Emmy yet. The Junos are this weekend. When are they going to honor you?
Oh, I don't actually remember saying that at all, actually.
It's in print. It's in print. It's there. And you know who wrote that article? Grant Lawrence.
That's true. I am just there, like, so honored that, like, I would get my own day in Vancouver. I'd get a star on and you have a star too on the BC Hall Walk of Fame.
You got yours with one of your schoolmates, Colin James.
I don't think I ever went to school with Colin James, although I have worked out with him many years ago at the West Vancouver gym. We both kind of like were doing the weights. So I've always been thinking about my health. But I got to get back to the weights. So I think when you asked, sort of like, what is my message or do I have anything to promote? It's like, if I can do it, anybody can do it. Like, Don't give up. Like, and you can see from Terrydavidmulligan, like 1990, me holding a record, and and actually we're still at, you were talking about Pete Townsend in the 1960s. Like, don't give up. Like 300 episodes of your podcast every week. For me, just like keep going. Eventually you'll get there.
Here's the last thing. Your first interview was Art Bergman. My first interview was Gene Vincent. How about that?
That is incredible. From Gene Vincent to Art Bergman to...
Thank you.
Thanks so much, Terrydavidmulligan. Keep on rocking the free world. All the best. 300 episodes of Mulligan.
Thank you, buddy.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Do.